You're now, that's what's important. We experience a collapse in our life structure most of the time because we failed to funeralize failed yesterdays. You have to be strong enough basically to realize you can elevate out of your current situation. Instead of looking at where you think you should be by now, look at where you have grown out of. There are many individuals who need help with their blueprint. And I want to be that vessel, nothing special, just that mouthpiece to inspire you to construct the best version of your life that you can be. Welcome to the Life Structuring with Eric podcast. I am your host, Eric. Thank you for tapping in for another edition of the Life Structuring podcast. Happy Monday to everyone. You know how we start off every week. Use that index finger. Hit that share button. Share it with your family, friends. This is going to be an amazing episode, and we definitely have some great tools for anyone trying to rebuild. This is going to be a great episode. So, yeah, do yourself a favor and hit that share button and share it. Yes, so we are almost at Christmas, less than, right at 2 weeks away from the new year. And I was reading something this morning, and the question was, are you in the same place that you were in last year at this time? How much have you grown in the past year? And if you feel like you haven't grown, you only have less than 2 weeks to activate whatever it is that you've been sitting on and move towards being in a much better place this time next year. We are so good at using excuses just to get away with today. And then tomorrow comes, and basically when tomorrow comes, then we can justify the excuse that we used yesterday. And before you know it, you've justified and used that same excuse all year long. 365 days have passed, and you have done absolutely nothing. You're still in that dull relationship where you know that female is using you, or that guy means you no good, but a year later, you're still in that relationship. You've been saying you're going to put down the bottle or you're going to stop drugging, and a year later, you're still doing it. It could be that job that you're on. It's a dead end job. And you keep saying, I'm going to look for another job, but you haven't did it and you're still on that job. It could be that you said you were going to work out, and a year later, and you're like 25 to 30 pounds heavier, and you have done nothing at all to work out. Stop making excuses. Stop making excuses. And you're the only one. No one can push you to do it. We can talk and talk until you're just as bald as I am. But until you find it in your heart that something ignites on the inside of you, make you want to change and do better, it's not going to happen. But yeah, that question, it stood out to me this morning when it said, where were you at this time last year? And look at where you're at now. And are you happy about your growth, or could you have done better? I mean, we always could do much better than what we have done, But at the same time, I can say that I am pretty happy about where I'm at on today compared to where I was at last year. But we could go on and go on and go on about that. But I'm going to stop right there. And we have an amazing guest on today. And I just want to just jump right on and jump right into this discussion with her. Sarah, she has a pretty amazing story. Um, Story very similar to mine. Uh, Listening at her, which they always say, we don't look like what we have been through. Uh, Definitely, you look at Sarah, she doesn't look like what she's been through, but she have amazing testimony of renovation and pushing through to heal from her past. And not only is she pushing through to heal from her past, she's actually assisting others in healing as well. Which they always say we can't keep what we have unless we give it away. And she's doing an amazing job of healing others as well. So at this time, I'm going to bring Sara Schweigart on this time. Hey, Sara, how are you?
Well, good, Eric. Thank you for having me very much today. I appreciate you.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you for being willing to come on.
Yeah, that was an amazing reflection on this morning. That what kind of excuses have I been using the last 365 years? My whole life was an excuse. You know what I mean? Up until just recently, and I changed things. Everything was an excuse.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and what you said was until we recognize it, until we recognize that, because a lot of times the excuse is us. We are the excuse, you
Right.
know, um, and just trying to justify and validate the reason why we're not moving forward, and the biggest thing is comfort, being in that comfort zone or what we think, because a lot of times, you said a lot, comfort zones can kill. And a lot of times, we're in a comfort zone, but it's toxic stuff that we're using to be comfortable. And if we don't hurry up and exit out of that comfort zone, we could very much die right in that comfort zone. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so true. I think plus too, I mean, in my addiction, I didn't really even know what I was worth or that I deserved anything better. So I always went back to what I knew because it was so easy. I never looked at what the other possibilities could be or became that big world thinker where I looked at all aspects. I just went back to what I knew because I was scared to go anywhere else because it was easy. I didn't have to work at anything. I didn't have to make any plans. So that's
Right.
getting stuck is crazy. And I feel like that goes us getting stuck goes back to what happened in our past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. So, let's jump in a little bit, and just tell the Life Structure family a little bit about who you are and where you're from, and we'll just kind of build off of that.
All right. So I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. I wasn't born there, but I was raised there. Grew up on a farm. To me, growing up, I had a pretty normal childhood. Up until probably age 10 is when I realized that things were not okay. And that's when my dad got sober and I kind of entered in the program. And that I always felt like there was a hole and an emptiness in my life up to that point. I think about between 5 and 10, I started realizing that I had some kind of emptiness. But I entered into a recovery program, my dad's recovery program, and went with that. I married real young. Upon that divorce from that abusive man, I started using, and I'm that person that I can't just use one thing. Once I start using, I keep going. Excuse me. And that was my life. Things would happen. I'd have a suicide or a death in the family, whatever that was, and I wouldn't know how to deal with those feelings because I never learned those coping skills. So I would justify using, and relapse was a part of my story over and over and over again. And the last time, man, it almost took me out. The last time I uh, I left Omaha with the purpose of just not being responsible for anything, and I hit a bunch of different states just traveling aimlessly before I got to Arizona. And when I did get to Arizona, the worst day of my life happened. You know, I had a situation that ultimately left me in prison. And I remember getting arrested, and I remember being in the holding cell and calling all of my family, and just calling them repeatedly, and nobody would pick up the phone until somebody did, and that was my dad. And he had told me at that time, he's like, "You're dead to me. Don't call back." And it was in that moment that I realized, even though I was delusional and still high, you know, like, oh man, I can't manipulate anybody. I can't lie to anybody anymore. Like, I'm on my own. Um, and that didn't change things for me in that moment, but it put that seed, like, what are you gonna do now? Throughout my stay in jail, waiting, you know, fighting my trial and fighting my case, I went to church and heard about Jesus. And it wasn't very much long after that I was waiting in a holding cell when the Lord put his hand on me, and I dropped to my knees and I cried, you know, out to God, and I said, you know, I don't know what this is for, but I need your help right now, because that's what we do. We ask for help when we're at our least, right? But instantly in that moment, my tears left me. I felt this warm sensation, and I was able to stand to my feet and wipe the tears away and go out and face the judge that day. And from that day forward, my life drastically changed. And I decided that, you know, as I was fighting my case, that I was going to start feeding into my recovery. I needed to find out what was wrong with me and what I needed to do to change. And so that's what I did. And when I got sentenced, I did 6 years in Perryville prison. But when I got sentenced, I made myself a big promise, like, you've got to change your life. You got to do everything you can. Uh, and I did. I went to prison. I took part of every program I possibly could. Even when there wasn't one, I would, you know, or I didn't qualify for one, I would weasel my way in there just because I knew I needed to find out. And that was my story. Like, I went to church, I was saved, I was saying the prayer of salvation. I just surrounded myself with people who weren't doing other things, right? And I wasn't in the shenanigans, I wasn't into the drama. I was going to church, I was programming, and I was working, and I was supporting myself. And in the meantime, I'm in my cell. I'm writing out my life story over. I just remember writing for hours. And you know, that continued for years. Time stands still inside. And you know, eventually my family started to come around, and I was starting to heal from some of those relationships and repair those relationships. And you know, at the time my end of my sentence came, at that point I was like, gosh, you know, what am I going to do now? You know, you have to plan for what your next step is. So that's what I did. I started planning about 3 years before I got out, because I knew I never wanted to go back to prison. And I started networking, and I hooked up with Bridges Reentry. And they just showed me all kinds of love in there. They walked beside me inside. They've been there for me upon my release, and they've been a big part of my story. I actually got out, hit the ground running, started working for a recovery house. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, and I found myself going from a house manager to a client and being in an IOP. And I kept asking God, why are you doing this? You know, like, I figured it out. I went through all these programs. I did all this stuff. I'm in my meetings. I've got a sponsor. She knows who I am. I'm working my steps. Why is all this happening? And I realized I was getting stuck in that victim that I knew to get comfortable with. But at the end of the day, I
Mm,
had to change my perspective and realize,
yeah.
okay, he's giving me stuff at this point. He's giving me these opportunities or these trials, these tribulations to grow from. And so I did it. You know, I graduated that program. I learned how to reset myself, and s- instantly started looking for a job. And now I work in recovery with people. And that's just it's been a resilient and trying journey that I've been on, but I don't stop. I keep going no matter what, because I know at the end of the day, if I can tell myself that I did the next right thing and that I'm continuing to grow and I'm hitting my goals, then those goals are going to turn into a future, and that future is going to help me grow. And um, it's been hard, but it's been the best change I could have ever made in my life. I don't recognize who I was a year ago. I don't recognize who I was the day I committed my crime, and I don't recognize myself as a child. I'm a completely healed and redeemed person through my recovery and through my higher power.
Amazing. Amazing. You don't recognize the person that you was a year ago.
No.
So I saw you shaking your head when I was sharing what I read this morning. So that's a round of applause on my end because the question was, if some of you just tuned in, where were you at last year this time? And look at where you're at now. Are you in the same place? Have you moved ahead? Have you moved backwards? And to hear Sarah say she doesn't recognize, looking at herself now, she's a total different person than she was last year this time. That's amazing because that's what it's all about. Once we set forth and we make that decision, first by
Mm,
surrendering and realizing that we are powerless over what had total control over us. And once you realize that you're powerless and you surrender and you decide to move forward, it's up to you, the life that you construct. But first, it starts with you finding a higher power, you know, um, that you can have faith in to get you to that next step that you're trying to get to. Holding yourself fully accountable of everything and connecting with people that's going to help you and support you to get there. There's nothing like speaking with someone early on in your recovery and they tell you, call me any time of night that you need to. Uh, I would rather for you to call me at 2 or 3 in the morning
yeah.
than for you to go and use and that be the last time you use and you die from it. That's and I mean if you're all in and you have totally surrendered, when you connect with someone that tell that to you, more than likely you're going to stay connected with them because they have your best interest at hand
Yeah.
and they're always going to be there for you. Um, but yeah, once you start to put these, you you start to put all of these steps together, you start to see your life totally change. And looking at Sarah, she's just so she has a sense of peace over her. She talks so you talk so calmly, and just for today, you're confident in yourself that you are
Yeah.
not going backwards. And that's what it's all about. Just being calm and just any obstacle just that arise, like, hey, you may be ahead of me, but I'm going to pray my way through this. I have a support group that can help me pray my way through this. But one thing that I'm not going to do, I'm not going backwards. I'm not
Right.
going backwards. And I think for so many people, some people they look ahead like you talked about how bad you want to get a car right now, you know, but you're accepting that it's a process and God is going to um as long as you keep walking the walk, God is going to speak to you when it's time. And I wouldn't be surprised if you email me in the next 3 months and be like, Eric, guess what? Somebody gifted me with the car. I wouldn't even be surprised because of the people that you are connected to, because of the church that you are connected to. You spoke of some of the great things that they're doing for you.
Mm,
And God puts people in our path to bless us just because they see how big that our heart is and all of the things that we're doing. And He wants to make sure that everything is lined up for us. So, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if you send me an email in the next few months and you'd be like, You would never believe this. You are right. Somebody blessed me with the car
Yeah.
because things like that happen to people like us. It really does.
Well,
Things like that happen.
I've already been blessed with a full ride scholarship because of the
Exactly.
things that I'm doing. I'm in my third week of school to get my bachelor's in communication, and that was not something I thought was going to happen. Inside, how am I going to go back to school? How am I going to finish this degree I was working hard for before I relapsed? And I've been out since June, and I'm in my third week of school with 100% of my grade, and that's because of God, and it's because of the people I surrounded myself. So you're 100% right. If somebody just chose to bless me with the car, that would be amazing. But I understand that part of rebuilding my life and part of you know changing is doing those little steps, taking those little things into consideration, weighing and considering your options, and not moving too fast. Because I don't know about you, Eric, but I got a me problem,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that person's selfish, and that person's seeking instant gratification. So I think my biggest lesson I can share that I've learned is just reset, take a minute, take the space and the place that you need when things are happening that aren't the greatest, and weigh the pros and cons, and just take a road you never took before. Try something different. You want to be something different, you got to do something different.
Right. Right. So someone may be watching or listening that may still be active, in some type of stronghold. Um, Talk about, Sarah, when you think your addiction started and how old that you were when you really when you figured out got to the root of it and figured it out.
So for me, if you would have asked me that question a year and a half ago, I'd have told you my addiction started at age 19 on Valentine's Day. I remember that day very clearly, but I was able to take a part of Women in Recovery, which is a program inside, and part of that is writing your life story and doing all this stuff. And it was in that treatment program I was in that I realized, hey, like I remember taking a drink at age 5. I remember my dad very specifically putting beer in a tin cup. I'm old, so they had the little tin cups back in the day, and putting that beer in the tin cup and drinking with him while he was at that party. Um, and I remember it didn't just stop there. I remember very specifically going to the to the corner store with a note on my chest and buying, and money for him to get beer, and taking him beer out of the refrigerator and always sneaking one. And from 10 to 5 when he got sober, that's what I did. He was an alcoholic, and I saw him do it, and he okayed that night, and so I would drink whether he knew it or not. I was drinking, and I was drinking with him. I can't say that he actively knew, but he started that addiction. And when he got sober, when I was 10, his addiction and his recovery became my recovery. I was in a program with him, and that sets the tone. I think it sets the tone when your parents allow something. I did it with my kids too. I'm not any better, but I can say that that addiction started at that age 5. That spiritual hole of addiction started at that point.
Yeah. Wow. And that's the thing. Most people, if they fess up and get real with themselves and they talk about when they do that self inventory and they go back and really find the root of when it started to grow in their life, it's normally somewhere between 3 years old and 13 years old. It's somewhere from 3 to 13 in that 10-year span that it no but unfortunately a lot of times, we're 19, 26, or 30, sometimes older than that before you figure it out. Because you may just be that old before you stop. But once you do that self inventory and you go back and you start looking at everything that you kind of went through and you plan that tape out, it's like, hey, this happened to me all these years ago.
Yeah.
This is where it stemmed from.
Yeah, I truly believe in something that God tells me every day to share with people that I'm assisting. But until I figured out what it was in my life, then I couldn't deal with that. You know, it just I stayed stuck in that little girl trying to save that little girl all those years and didn't even realize I
Yeah,
was trying to save that person.
right.
But once I figured it out and then I learned in that, okay, I figured it out. What do I do? Because if I figure it out, I'm just going to hold on to it and look at it. And am I going to let it eat me alive?
Mm-hmm.
But I learned
Right.
that the best thing I could do was share that with whoever wanted to hear it, whether it was the newcomer, my sponsor, friends, on shows like this. Like, I have to share that because somebody's going to relate to that. And the more I
Yes.
share it, the more I gain strength from it. It no longer becomes a weakness. It no longer has control of me, but I have control of it because I'm choosing to say, this happened to me. This is
Right.
what my life was like. This is the situation I put myself in, and this is how I overcame it. Once you
Mm-hmm.
can harness that power, you can do so much with it. Not for yourself only,
Yeah.
you can do it with other, you can do it for other people.
Right. And one of the things I find interesting, Sarah, is you talked about how I think you said you saw over 20 therapists,
Yeah.
and none of these therapists, I guess, really could get to the root of the issue, or either you told them everything but what they wanted to hear to assist you to get to that, but then you end up in prison for like 6 years,
Mhm.
and Sarah figures out uh, all of these things that Sarah had done, and you figured out what you needed to do to start your renovation so you could heal
Yeah.
and start to rebuild your life. So, talk about when you first ended up in the Department of Corrections and how things kind of went from there.
Well, I can say that prison saved my life. Nobody wants to end up in prison. Nobody wants to, find themselves separated from their family. But for me, I was not only just separated from my family, I was separated from the state I grew up in. I knew nobody here. Nobody was coming. I don't know if you've ever heard that lady, but she'll tell you nobody's coming. And for me, I was alone. I'm trying to figure it out. I saw the road that I could go down in prison. I could be out on the yard. I could play cards. I can continue to fight. I could go use drugs there, or I could make a decision. And I had already made that decision to change my life. And like I had said, I decided to go to programs, and when there weren't programs, I had enough background from being 10 and being in recovery to start my own meetings, and I was able to get my hands on books, and I was going to the library, and uh, you know whatever it was I could get my hands on. But I had to make that choice because I could still do wrong and I could still ignore everything, or I could wallow in my sorrow because I'm there, and it's so easy for those walls to close in on you and to get depressed. And I did stay stuck there, honestly. I For a couple of years I became complacent, and I thought, well, I'm sober, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm working, who cares? Like, I don't want to find out what's wrong with me. I got enough time. And then I woke up one day and I was like, man, I'm miserable. Why? Why can't I just choose happiness? And it was in that moment that I was like, I'm going to wake up happy. Every day, I'm going to make it a goal to be happy. I had to start telling myself that I was worth it and that I deserved more, even though I'm now this criminal. I have a label on me. I'm never going to be able, the first thing I thought, I'm never going to get a job. This is it. Like, I might as well tattoo my face head to down to my toes. Like, I am going to be nothing. Nobody wants nothing to do with me. And then I realized at some point, man, like I am a person
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a good person that made a mistake, you know?
Right.
And I went
Right.
to my first church service with St. Peter's and signed up. And they would send me so many cards. I talk about it all the time. I still have these cards, but in my darkest moments, I had these cards coming in from church people, and then I had a pen pal, and that they're supporting me, and then I'm making friends that are also going to recovery meetings, and I'm doing that recovery thing with them, and somewhere I decided to stop isolating myself and being that person that I was labeled and to step out of that and figure out who I was and what I liked and what I wanted and how to set a boundary. Man, that was the hardest thing to learn for me, was to set a boundary. I needed to figure out where I began and where I ended. I needed to figure out what was right and what was not right because for so long we draw a line in the sand, right? And then at some point something happens, we erase that line and we put the line somewhere else saying, "Oh, I'm never going to do drugs. I'm never going to smoke it. I'm never going to shoot it. I'm never going to sleep with anybody for money and I'm never going to live out on the streets." But that stuff goes away and with that we lose our identity. We lose who we are and that's who I didn't know. So I had to find out. So I call it dating myself. I started dating myself in prison, even though the only color I could wear was orange. I figured out, okay, what kind of music do you like? But I surrounded myself with like minded people that were doing the same thing. And because I did that, I became peer support certified. And I went from this ugly, jealous person hearing people talk about their families and being mad because they had a relationship with their family to, okay, like that's so cool that you get to talk to your family. Like that's amazing. But also being able to sit with them and hear what they were having going on and just being able to relate
Mm.
to them and share stories. And it was transformational. I realized that the trauma that I experienced as a child and throughout my adult life, I had to learn that the people around me were going through their own trials and tribulations, and maybe they didn't know how to deal with that. And I learned to forgive, right? Forgiveness isn't for the other person, it's for ourselves. But I had to
Yeah.
forgive myself. The
Mm-hmm.
Bible says, forgive yourself because God loves you, and I'm horrible at quoting the Bible, even though I read it all the time. But I was like,
Me
dang,
too.
God loves me. God forgives me. He's redeeming me. I am no longer this person or this slave of this useless loser that I've been called, but I am absolutely necessary. And I surrounded myself with women who would tell me I was necessary, and then I started believing it and I started
Yes.
mentoring and I started growing and you say what were you doing a year ago? A year ago I was making a spread in prison talking to my friends, facilitating recovery groups and being involved in my recovery and there's a little bit of survival guilt there, but since I've gotten out, like I advocate for them. I go speak at parole when I can and try to change that culture. I'm compliant. I go to meetings. I anything I have to do. It doesn't stop because I figured out who I was. It doesn't
Yeah.
stop there. The work is never gonna. It's never gonna stop. It's always gonna continue.
Right. Right. Yeah. Definitely. You said, when you were in that jail cell, you really felt like you didn't matter at one point because nobody would answer your phone calls. You weren't getting any mail. But you said you started to date yourself. You started to surround yourself with people that were trying to do the same thing that you were trying to do. And, that's one thing I used to hear a lot in the rooms. We do recover, you know,
Yes, we do.
and and the thing is realizing that you do matter.
Yeah.
You do have purpose. Your life is just as valuable as that person that's never drank anything, they never smoked anything, but your life is just as valuable as theirs. But you have to figure it out for yourself
Yeah.
and realize that you do recover. And like you said, you started dating yourself. When you started dating yourself, what happened? You started to love yourself again
Yes.
because that's so important. You can't love life until you start to love yourself again. Once you start to love yourself, you start to appreciate that glow that's coming back into your life. Because we have to be the one that see that for ourselves. Because if we're waiting for a mom and dad, sister, brother, cousin, son, daughter to give us that approval on their end, it may not come as quick as we need it. So we have to learn to love ourselves, first. You know, you're not conceited if you go and you get dressed in the morning, you look in the mirror and you say, damn girl, you looking
Mhm.
good today. Because nobody else may not tell you, but it's okay to speak it into your own self. And the more that you hear it from yourself, you know, when you hear it, when you start to hear it from other people, it's going to be like, hey, I know. I worked hard, in the last year to look like this. Go back a year ago, I was tore up. I didn't look nothing like. So you appreciate it because you've been able to see the journey and you push through. But more than anything, you have to do it for yourself. If you're doing it to get approval, you're seeking attention and approval from others. Before you know it, you'll be going right back down the same path because you're basically trying to people please. I know that a little bit too well.
Mm.
So you have to learn to stay locked in for yourself.
Yeah, I think that you bring up real, like, I really love what you just said right now, because for me, every time that I was trying to get sober, I was doing it because I wanted my kids back, or I had
Mm-hmm.
a different agenda than myself. It wasn't forever for me. And then I think, God uses different things in our lives, but I had to go to prison. I had to have no support. I had to have that time alone and realize that, okay, well, I got to get better regardless if my family's going to be there, regardless if there's going to be forgiveness on their side. I had to learn that I'm going to do this, or I'm going to let this other thing eat me. But if I'm going to do this, then I have to be okay not knowing what's going on in their life. If they choose not to let me in, then I have to be okay with that. I have to walk through that and not over it or around it or anything else, because that's stuffing those feelings down that will take me back out. I can use my family as an excuse all day, every day, or things that happen to me all day, every day. It's whether you yourself try to walk through it and continue to love yourself and realize that it's this too shall pass, right? It's a
Yeah,
difficult thing to do until you realize that you have to let that go or accept it. Page, 417, you have to go through that acceptance to be able to get through that, um, and keep moving and be okay.
right. Yeah, definitely. So about 6 months ago, for those of you that just may be tapping in, about 6 months ago, you were released out of prison. You don't look like it, but you're released out of prison 6 months ago. Describe the person Sarah has become in the past 6 months. You had already received freedom before you came out
Yes.
of prison. You just was unlocked and released where you could walk out, of the place that I believe that God really put you there so you could gain stability.
Yeah.
Uh, just hearing your story, I feel like, which we all say sometimes being locked up is the best place for some people.
Yeah.
And I believe, God, because you definitely have purpose over your life. And sometimes God have to set us down and isolate us so we can figure out what that purpose is. And at the same time, he's he's protecting that purpose that he's planted on the inside of you because he don't want that purpose to die on the inside of you without you being able to live it out.
Right.
So he isolated you for 6 years. He released you about 6 months ago, and now you have just become this butterfly that came out the cocoon so quick. Talk about the person that Sarah has become in the past 6 months.
Getting released was scary. not knowing, like I said, I'm not from the state, so my first address was a straight jail. I didn't know the streets. I didn't trust anybody. Um, Thankfully, I had built a network of people within the church, um, and I knew I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where I was going. I knew that I needed to latch on to recovery, because to me, I only had 5.5 years clean, prison tested clean. Like, could I walk through the streets or the bus stops or anything like that? So there was a lot of insecurity for me. And I will say it like this: there are a lot of great programs out there, and I've been a beneficiary of a lot of those programs. But there's also a lot of people out there that take advantage of people coming out of prison and see you as an insurance payment or what have you. So um, I've become very cautious in the last 6 months. I call it a world thinker, where I can now look at everything around me and kind of, I talk about all the time, I weigh my options and I try to work that path. I've become somebody who is 100% about my recovery. That is first and foremost above anything and anyone, because without that, I'm nothing. At the end of the day, if I'm not doing my recovery, I can't do my work. I'm a
Yeah.
dedicated friend at this point. Like, I've got to be a part of a family and join I get to be around kids. Somebody trusts me with their garage code. They let me live in their house. I become a student. Um, I become a servant. At the end of the day, I think that becoming a servant in the recovery world has saved me and kept me on the right path. Uh, I'm excited for my future, but the biggest thing I think I can say is I become an advocate and a hope dealer. That's what I like. That's not my
Yeah.
line, but that
Yeah.
is a thing here in Arizona, to be a hope dealer and to spread my knowledge, my experience, strength, home, my pain, everything, whatever I can. I have to give what was so freely given to me, and you know, sometimes I look at my life. I was just speaking with a mentor yesterday when I went out. We went and had our Christmas thing, and I said, I don't remember that vengeful person. Somebody was I was talking to, they were mad and they're gonna have revenge on this person, and that used to be me. And I looked at her. I said, I don't even recognize who I am today. Like, I was that person that was gonna somehow make you lose your job or do something to your car, and like, just be mad at the world. And I'm no longer mad. I'm happy. I'm blessed. I'm at peace. Every day I can find something grateful to be around. I have found my humor again. I can smile. Like, there's a sense of self-love within myself that people tell me radiates out and brings people to me. And I don't know if that's true. Honestly, I don't see it. I just keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing and try to do the best. But I think just setting the goals that I have and doing those little goals and celebrating my milestones has made me a happy person, and that's the first time I can't say I've ever been happy my entire life. There's been bouts here and there, but for an everyday kind of person, that's me now, right? Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew I was in
Yeah.
there?
Oh yeah. You know, as far as a part of being happy, I mean, I wake up every day just on fire, energetic. And I think for me, Sarah, it's just because I know that on July 7th, 2003, I died and my mom literally prayed me back to life.
Yeah, right.
So just being grateful to have a second chance at
Mm,
life, you know, I vowed to never forget where I came from.
yeah,
So for that alone, I'm just on fire every day,
yeah,
happy. Um, you know, it's a lot of people, I feel like I'm a magnet and a lot of people just gravitate towards me because, they just enjoy being around people energetic, people that's going to pour into them, people that's just going to hold them accountable, and I have people that I hold accountable, and I have people that hold me accountable. And that alone, it keeps me out of my comfort zone. It helps me to continue to grow. And each time I reach a new level, and just when I'm getting comfortable, here's someone else like, okay, you accomplished this. Don't get too comfortable here. Let's go for the next level,
Yeah.
And I love the people that challenge me. We challenge each other. And once again, going back to playing that tape this morning, when you look at where you were a year ago, now that I heard that this morning, as long as God continues to bless me to see year
Yeah.
after year, that's going to be something that I'm going to start doing yearly. Just looking back a year later at how much I've grown,
Yeah.
because it's a beautiful thing. And not only looking at how much you've grown, looking at the people that grew alongside you,
Yeah.
the people that you challenged to be better. And they actually saw something in you and they connected with you and they grew alongside you. When you called them out on their stuff, you know, they didn't get butthurt, or even if they did get butthurt, they knew that you were intentional and it was tough love that you were giving them. And they grabbed a hold of those tools that you gave them and they took them and used them to grow.
Yeah.
That's what life is all about. You know, like that's what life is all about. And when you realize that you do matter and you connect with people that's going to give you that tough love and they're going to push you to new levels, new heights, and that's the person that you want to stay connected to.
Hmm.
You don't want to be connected with people that's pretty much in the same circle that you're in, and they're not allowing anybody to exit that circle, and they're not letting anybody else into that circle. And everybody in that circle is doing the same thing. Nothing.
The same thing.
Right. The
Yeah.
same thing. Nothing. Going to work, going home, speaking negativity, don't have nothing positive to ever say, never energetic. How you doing? Ah, I guess I'm okay. There is somebody that would love to have your breath that you're breathing right now. You know, anytime somebody said to me, I'm like, it's somebody in the hospital that's on the ventilator that's fighting for their life right now, right? You know, don't disrespect God with the breath that with the air that He's giving you to breathe right now. You
Yeah.
know, uh, people that work, same thing. They don't like their job. There's somebody that would love to have your job right now, right? You know, appreciate, the gift of life that you're blessed with just for today. You know, don't disappoint God. Don't disappoint the ones that's counting on you. But more than anything, first, before you can live up to the standards that God wants us to live up to, before you can live up to the standards of the people that's holding you accountable, you have to be determined, to be
Mm.
consistent, to
Yeah.
walk this thing out one day at a time, regardless of whatever it is. You just have to be consistent and just be willing to endure the process, be willing to sometimes, when you're presented with an obstacle, be willing to just humble yourself. Don't be that one to say, I've gotten this far. Why is this happening to me? Because God is saying, why not you? You know,
Right.
I've been watching you build, but I just want to see how strong you are. Are you strong enough to withstand this? You know, I'm just trying to bend you. I'm not trying to break you,
Yeah.
but I just want to see you push forward and snap back into the person that I saw last week and get back on track. Once you realize that, like for me, a lot of times when I'm faced with the obstacle, I laugh. I'm like, God, you have such a sense of humor. You
I wish
know,
I could do that. I panic at first. I revert back to the old person. I'm like, wait a minute, you're not that woman anymore. What are you doing? Like, but it's very short lived these days. But at first, I'm like, what?
see, But see what you just said? It's short lived. It's
Yeah.
okay to have that 30 second to 5 minute, little span there where you kind of
Right.
flatline and be like, wait a minute, what is going on here? And you panic a little bit. But somewhere within that 30 second to 5 minutes, you're gonna snap back and be like, okay, I got this. Just reevaluate and
Yeah.
get back on track.
Well, I think that's the most important thing you can do too. Like when something is happening, life hasn't been perfect. I lost a friend of my family right out the gate. And my first thought was, oh, I gotta go get some shooters. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. But you have to give yourself a minute. You have to, as an addict, I'm not used to feeling feelings. I don't know what that feeling is. I didn't know it had a name. I know,
Mm,
you know, mad, sad, angry. That's what I knew. And I had to give myself, what is this feeling? Why am I feeling it? Okay, how can I move on, and what's going to make me feel better? And you have to build a toolbox. You have to know how to breathe. And it sounds crazy, but you're going to tell me to breathe and I'm panicking, but it helps. You have to,
yeah.
it is a learned thing that you have to walk through. You have to figure
Mm-hmm.
out what's good for you and what's going to get you through that moment. For me, I had to learn how to ask for help because I can do things all by myself and I don't trust anybody in the world. But look where it got me.
Yeah.
So first I start, okay, God, please help me with my prayer, and then I pick up a phone or I'll text somebody, and another thing I do is I embrace people. I go to a meeting, I go to the same meetings, and if I see somebody new that's sitting alone, I will walk up to them and be like, "Hey, my name is Sarah. I've met some amazing people doing that, and they're very close friends to me. I love all of them, and that's the other thing. If when you're in that, you have to meet people. You have to take out. I think vulnerability is a power and a strength now, where I used to think it was a weakness. You have to take that risk. You have to get that person's number. You have to try to reach out and talk to that because we have to build healthy relationships. Human relationships. Humans aren't meant to be alone. We're meant to do this together. And at the end of the day, even when it's scary, I stepped out in faith because God told me that's what I needed to do. And because of that, like, man, I can look at my phone. I got 300 phone numbers. If I'm having a bad day, I might not know who everybody is in that phone, but I know when something does happen or something does go down that I can pick up my phone and call somebody.
Yeah. Definitely. And that's the main thing. When something goes down, pick up the phone and use that support system.
Right.
It's mandatory and it definitely will save your life.
Yeah.
Definitely will save your life. So last question. Anyone that's listening or watching that's pretty much dealing with some type of stronghold right now, um, and they're using those excuses, after I finish this right here, I'm not going to use anymore. Um, if he hit me one more time, I'm going to leave him. Um, uh, the list could go on and on. But if there is someone that's just like in the brink of some type of addiction or stronghold right now, what encouraging words could you give them?
You know, don't get stuck in what your situation was. Nobody ever told me that I was worth it and that I deserved anything. And I just want people to know that they do have a group of people and they have people in their lives that will welcome them. And there's no loneliness. If you choose to stay stuck, you're gonna stay stuck and nothing's gonna ever change. But if you just accept that uncomfort and that discomfort of taking a risk and asking for help or walking into a meeting, whatever that looks like for you, and know that it's not going to be forever. Everything is temporary. Don't make something temporary a permanent thing. Don't stay
Mm,
there. Walk through it because there are people out here in the rooms, in the churches, wherever it is that you ask for help that are going to embrace you and they are going to love you until you cannot love yourself. You
yeah,
are forgiven. You are a child of God, and we're waiting for you. We're waiting you to show you what life really can be. So just take a risk and ask for help.
That's it. Bottom line, take a risk and ask for help. Don't let a temporary situation become a permanent situation.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that because yeah, so many times, we make those excuses day in and day out, and
Yeah.
before we know it, it's 5 years later, and you're still in that abusive relationship. It's 5 years later, and you're still, drinking, smoking, whatever it is. It's 5 years later, and you still haven't picked up that phone and called that loved one that you've been angry with all these years. Um, but I promise you, regardless if it's abusive relationship, if it's stronghold of addiction, if it's a loved one that you haven't spoken to in years, regardless of whatever it is, eventually death is going to visit somebody in that situation. And then when that happens, now your conscience is going to just take control over you. And now it's going to be the worst me. And you're going to have that pity party.
Mm.
And now that's going to start to go on for more years because you didn't stop. So it's just, yeah, like Sarah said, make up your mind and just do it. Ask for help. Because you know, this is something that is it's going to overpower you no matter how long you stay stuck in it. And I say it week in and week out, it's going to be uncomfortable either way. It's going to be uncomfortable if you stay in the situation. It's going to be uncomfortable if you try to build your way out of it. But guess what? When you're stretching yourself to get out of that situation, it's only going to be uncomfortable for a certain amount of time because once you grow out of it, you're going to grow into a new person. First of all, you're going to be growing into freedom,
Mm.
so once you experience that freedom, that's when that pain is going to start to subside. But if you stay in it, you continue to drink, you continue to drug or whatever it may be, you're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You're going to remain uncomfortable. So definitely ask for help. Ask for help and just there's you have so much greatness on the inside of you. But until you realize it, we can pour it into you day in and day out. And one of the crazy things is someone can be talking and just like at church and you're like, who told them my business? They're talking straight to me. And you realize everything that that person is saying to you is true. And you say, you know what? They're right. And you make up your mind that you're going to do it. But the thing that you don't do is remove yourself from that environment that you're in, disconnect from those friends that, well, I'm not even going to say friends, disconnect from those toxic people that you're connected to. So when you make up your mind that you're going to change, you have to change everything. And that's what happens. We make up in our mind that we are going to change and we're going to stop doing A, but we stay connected to B and C. So you only change temporarily and then you're right back because you can't change and still be connected to toxicity. So you have to change everything, everything. So with that being said, Sarah, is there anything else you would like to share before we tap out tonight?
The only other thing I'd like to say is like, you're stronger than what you think you are. Look how far you've made it at this point because you
Mm,
walked through some things. So you do have the strength, no matter if you think you do or not, you have the strength to get through it. And I would also like to thank you, Eric, honestly, giving me this opportunity. Um, I, I, I I love to do things like this. I love to share my story, and I just want to thank you so much for having me tonight.
Definitely. This was definitely amazing, Sarah. And you know, going into the new year, I am going to be bringing on co-hosts from time to time,
Okay.
and I think you just earned your spot. So yeah, we'll definitely be talking and getting some dates in queue. I'm sure my Life Structure family have really enjoyed you tonight. It's been some great comments coming through. So yeah, I definitely will be tapping in with you because yes, I would love to bring you on from time to time as my co-host
I would
because
love that.
okay, all right. Well, if you love it, I love it even more. So we
All
definitely going to
right.
make it happen.
Let's
We're
do
definitely
it.
going to make it happen. Definitely. So yeah, thank you guys for tapping in tonight. Be sure to share this out with anyone that you know of that could take these tools and build off of all these tools that Sarah gave us tonight. If you're listening via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, any of those audio platforms, make sure that you subscribe, download, share, send to other people, text it, email it. Um, we're just trying to be a blessing
Yeah.
to people that feel like they're stuck in life. You know, every week that we tap in, it's like as long as I have one person that's watching or listening, I
Right.
feel like I'm doing everything that God wants me to do. When I see multiple people that's logged in, watching and listening, it definitely warms my heart. I'm definitely grateful for you. But more than anything, it's the emails that I receive when people watch or listen to the broadcast
Yeah.
and they give us that feedback about how that person was a blessing to them, how it touched them, how they have that son or daughter or husband or brother or what have you that they let listen to it and their life was blessed, by what they that's what this is all about. That's what it's all about. So yeah, I definitely thank you guys for tapping in and definitely share it and bless somebody with it because I know Sarah's story is going to set someone free. Definitely. So, with that being said, you guys, this is actually the last episode for this year. So, yeah, because next Monday is actually going to be Christmas Eve. So, yeah,
Yeah.
this is actually the last episode. I think we have a 180 plug that's going to air on this Friday. If you guys have been missing those, it's basically just 3 minutes that myself or a guest come on and they just give a powerful 3 minute plug. And it's basically something to set the tone for the day
Nice.
to nourish your mind, body, and soul. So, yeah, tap in for that this Friday. But after Friday, yes, our next episode won't be back until the first week of January. Um, you guys have been amazing supporters all year, and I look forward to growing with you in 2024. Um, but yeah, you guys have an amazing holiday.
Yes. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everyone. Look forward to building with you in the new year. And if you are having issues getting Christmas gifts,
Mm.
do 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 not let stress be a reason for you to go backwards. You know, it's okay because guess what? You still have to live after Christmas. You still have to live after Christmas. So that just came into my spirit. So I just felt I needed to share that with someone. Uh, please do not get discouraged if you're scrambling, feeling like you can't get a loved one a gift because you calling or texting them and telling them that you love them, I think that would be the biggest gift that they would like to receive. So definitely don't be discouraged by that. I promise you, I'm logging off after this. Blessings to you, Dr. Khadijah. Thank you so much for blessing me with Sara. She was such a blessing to us. So thank you for that. And yeah, we're going to log off now. With that being said, great people, Life Structure family, you have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your week. And remember, you do matter and you can bounce back better. With that being said, have an amazing evening.
Good night, everybody.
Blessings.